All right, guys, welcome back. We got another seminar here at the venue in Gadsden. Come on down, the Alabama Fishing Show and Expo. It is packed. It is absolutely packed. So come check it out. But we're going to jump in here, talking some skinny water fishing with Coley McGowan, one of our pro staffers at Bucks Island, and man, this guy, when he talks skinny water, he means skinny water. So I hope you get something out of it. I'm going to flip the camera around, and they should be getting started here in just a few minutes.
Thank you. Hey, how's everybody doing today? I'm Coley McGowan. I fish kayak tournaments, and I just fun fishing a kayak. I fish a lot of skinny water, shallow water here in Alabama, but it works all across the country, Tennessee, Georgia, Pennsylvania. I've been all over fishing skinny water. Does anybody have any questions or anything on their mind about skinny water, any techniques they're interested in learning, anything like that? So here I fish really shallow water, like it's mostly sight fishing. Clear, current, it can be all year long. I don't like fishing deep water. It's not something that's my strong point. I gravitate towards moving water, whether it be a river, a creek, or just like backwater, swampy type stuff. I got into kayak fishing to kind of distance myself from, traffic, and to explore and see places that, you typically don't get to see every day. So I try to venture as far back as I can and get away from the crowd. But here, we have tributaries and creeks and rivers that are big as this room and smaller. You go to Pennsylvania, and their tributaries and rivers and creeks may be a mile wide. The Susquehanna River, for instance, is a mile wide. So it going from here to there is like the ocean. It's just a huge difference. But the same techniques work. As a kid, I grew up fishing with my granddad, and I know the number one thing I learned as a kid is pay attention to my surroundings. Like pick up on what's hatching, what's available. The fish go through phases throughout life and throughout the year. You'll have mayflies hatching. You'll have helger mites hatching. You'll have salamanders, be lizards, could be cicadas. I have a cicada bait right here made by Evergreen. This is called the gizmo. It mimics a lot of different insects. It looks like a cicada, looks like a spider. It could be a bee. They have a bee color. They have multiple different colors. They have them in white. You can rip the legs off, and it looks like a helger mite, possibly. But these baits float. So when stuff's hatching throughout the year, it's constantly falling out of trees. If you'll notice when you're fishing, you'll hear bluegill kissing or, what we call kissing, come up. They'll be, sucking the mayflies down or, popping bugs on the surface. And those bass are also eating these bugs. And there's actually a video of Nolan Miner on YouTube that you can go watch. One of the trail series I fished is a Hobie BOS series. And he actually won $10,000 in the Hobie BOS championship on that bait right there, on the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. It's an awesome video. It's great. Hats off to him. This was a kept secret for a long time, and then he kind of published it, and everybody learned about it. So you can't keep secrets forever. But it's yes, ma'am. It's just little things like that my granddad told me when I was a kid. Hey, take time when you're fishing skinny water, rivers, that people don't really think about. They're just going to go fishing. You're going to throw what you want to throw. You're going to throw spinnerbait. You're going to throw chatterbait, But actually take the time and go down the rivers and flip rocks over, look and see what's hatching, growing, depending on time of year, water temperature. Little things like that will help you out a ton. as far as putting the pieces to the puzzle together. And I know that's helped me a lot, is paying attention when I'm, practicing or, have a tournament coming up. Because this bait right here looks a lot different than this bait right here, size-wise. Well, if the bass are keying in on surface baits, well, you don't need to be throwing anything this size. It's the same bait, same maker. But if they're eating baits this side, it's going to be hard to fool them throwing baits this size sometimes. A lot of times, if they're keying in on smaller profile baits, whether it be a current break, an eddy, or, something like that in moving water, if you're throwing a large prop bait, they may be short striking it. They may not be committing that extra step because they're used to eating this. They're honed in on that. So it's just matching the hatch, I guess, so to speak, and knowing what the fish are, what they're targeting that time of year. Like this time of year, we just had a tournament on Logan Martin with our local club, Iron City, and I was able to take second. I started out throwing, I love shallow water cranking. It's like something I love. It's just bread and butter. But you got several different sizes. One of my favorites and everybody's favorite is the KVD 1.5. It gets the perfect depth for me this time of year, fishing rivers and creeks and stuff like that. And you can also fish out here on the main river, chunk rock, stuff like that. But this bait here has a lot different action than, say, a Berkeley Fritz Side 5. Their bills are shaped different. They have a different action, and that can be the difference in, putting the pieces of the puzzle. I threw this bait for about 2 hours, and I was getting plenty of bites, catching a few, and it just wasn't quite working out. I changed to this bait, and within 5 casts, I had the fish that put me in second. So I started throwing this, and I was able to, maintain that position. And I'm a firm believer, that, water temperature plays a role in what kind of baits you need to throw. In the summer months, I transition a lot to summer and fall. I transition a lot to shad-related baits. The crawfish this time of year are king before the spawn. So, a crawfish, Z-Man chatterbait works great. DT6 works great. Stuff like that in shallow water to mimic crawfish. If they're real finessey, smallmouth, spotted bass, stuff like that this time of year, it won't be long, they'll be moving up to spawn. I love throwing micro jigs. Light line, clear water. I want something that mimics what they're eating, because a lot of times they're not eating a lot of crawfish. As a kid, I'd flip rocks over looking for stuff to fish with when I was a kid. We didn't have all this great tackle growing up. So I would pick up little crawfish about this size right here. And that would be what they were eating. I'd take a small brim hook or whatever I had when I was a kid, pitch it out there, and they'd eat it instantly, So I try to mimic little things like that. And this bait right here is just about, they make crappie jigs this big. But when a spotted bass gets on bed, he will eat that 90% of the time. You pitch that in there, it's something that not everybody's throwing at him, in the springtime. The spawn, to me, I love spotted bass fishing. That's my thing. I do love, largemouth, smallmouth, but spotted bass is what I'm known for in Alabama. It's something I've spent my whole life doing. So moving from the fall, crawfish, I'll start throwing, a wacky rig when they spawn, that little jig, something I can keep in the strike zone longer. A 5-inch Senko sometimes can be a little big, so I'll move down to a 4-inch Senko. A lot of people throw these old school O-rings on a wacky rig. I've went away from this. I lose too many fish and too many baits throwing these. If you don't know what it is, a VMC split ring plier. They have come out with a new thing that Dan Perry put me on this year, fishing the team events, and we won the championship. And thanks to him, he showed me the new way to fish a wacky rig, because that's one of my everyday things that I throw. If I need a bite, that's what I'm going to. If I need to slow down, that's the rod I'm picking up. It's a VMC split ring plier tool. Traditionally you'll hook your wacky rig, whether it's a 1 or 2 aught, through the worm and under that O-ring. How many times have you threw out there, fish got it, well, he grabbed the worm and you pulled the O-ring off? You know, it's just like, you're like, crap, I've lost a worm, and now I've got to, you know, put on a new O-ring. That VMC has a wider plastic ring, and your hook doesn't go through the worm or through the ring. It has a small, tiny hole that your hook goes through, and it's so hard to get that worm off. I've caught tons of fish. Smallmouth are ferocious, just like spotted bass, and, you know, I've caught numerous fish off one worm and not have to change. It saved me a lot of time in tournaments. And then transitioning to the summer, which is my favorite time to fish. Everybody thinks, oh my gosh, it's so hot outside. It's 100 degrees, it's 90 degrees. Alabama is blessed with some of the prettiest rivers and creeks and backwaters that you can find. And if you don't fish them, I would advise find one, go fish. And that time of year is where I really hone in on topwater. These prop baits, Berkeley Chopos, become one of my favorites. If you can look at this one, there's an ungodly amount of teeth rash on that one. I like the bone and the powder color. I'm a natural guy. Whether, you know, it gets rainy or whatever, the fish don't change. They eat shad, they eat bluegill, they're going to eat those things. So I don't try to think too far outside the box as far as what my colors are. I'm going to give them what they eat and see every day, what they swim by and what they live with. So this time of year, early in the mornings, I'm throwing topwater. Whether it's a current seam, if I'm seeing a lot of bluegill and they're small, I'll throw a little Berkeley Chopo bluegill. If you notice, a lot of your bluegill have a little bitty chartreuse on the outer edge of their tail. A lot of people don't pay attention to stuff like that. I'll actually take a garlic scented Sharpie. If I'm throwing a soft plastic or something on a trailer on my spinnerbait, if I'm burning it, and I'll take a color Sharpie and put just that little bit of neon on there, because that's what they're keying in on. Wake bait. I throw a wake bait a lot because when they're keyed in on shad, this is a Jackal. I can't remember which one this is. This is the Mickey Jr. I throw this bait all the time. I hold my rod tip up. I'll throw it on, you can throw braid to fluoro leader. That's usually what I do. I hold my rod tip up and I work it across some of those shoals and eddies and current breaks. And the bass could be sitting there waiting for an ambush point, and that, mimics the shad and chubs and stuff that they're eating, perfectly. And also a chatterbait. I've won a ton of tournaments and done well in tournaments on a chatterbait. It's something that so many people in fishing have confidence in. It's something that I definitely have the utmost confidence in. I throw this thing everywhere. I throw pretty basic colors. I throw white. If I'm fishing backwater stuff where there's not a lot of shad or there's not any current, a lot of bluegill get in there. So I throw a bluegill color. I like the gold blade for bluegill. A chatterbait, good time in the springtime is a crawfish color. Also, when the shad starts spawning, you'll start seeing a lot of smaller a lot of small threadfin shad, small gizzards. Sometimes if they're not wanting to commit on a bigger profile chatterbait, I'll go to the Z-Man Micro. Chatterbait's got a little bit smaller profile. A lot of times I'll take and make my trailer smaller as well. I definitely like that. It's not as got put off as much vibration. It's a little bit more subtle, not as aggressive. Something also that a lot of people haven't seen, it's not really big on the market, is a rodent bait. A lot of people kind of get intimidated by big baits. I throw a lot of big baits. It's not something you're going to get a ton of bites on. For instance, I fished a team event for the KFL last year. We had an event in Hyco Lake, North Carolina. A lot of backwater places, beaver dams, downfalls in the water, stuff like that. And I saw squirrels near the bank. I saw a couple of rodents like, rats and stuff, just fields around. These rodent baits are big in Florida. There's a lot of, fields where there's mice and rats and stuff like that. But I saw some of that, and I was like, I'm going to throw this beaver. This is a Berkeley beaver. It's very loud, and it's pretty intimidating. It's a lot louder than your typical Berkeley Chopo. A lot, bigger presentation. That's the 90, and that's the Berkeley beaver. It is actually called the Bucktooth Chopo by Berkeley. but I actually caught my biggest fish in North Carolina throwing this. I was, getting my kayak nosed up to those beaver dams, and I would pitch it up in those shade pockets under trees, and I would slow roll it back, and it has a loud, bloop, 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 bloop. And I was working it painfully slow, and they just couldn't stand it. It just looked like something fell out of a tree and was trying to get back to the bank, and they act like they never saw it before. I mean, they just loved it. I fished some of the nastiest stuff across the country as far as I try to get where other people are not willing to get. I want to work. I want to outwork people. I want to earn it. And I cover a bunch of water, and I fish a lot of vegetation, trees, rocks, laydowns, and a big bait that has earned its place in my tackle box is a Strike King Skip and Buzz. This is pretty new. Typical buzz bait doesn't have this little bar right here. Buzz bait run up on its side. You can't skip them very well. Usually I use a buzz bait like open water stuff, grass edges. This right here, I throw it in the gunk. I throw it under docks. I throw it under trees, grass. It works everywhere because you're allowed to skip it with that bar. In South Carolina, Andy Montgomery actually has a video on this and fishing a river in South Carolina on YouTube. You can check that out. I just throw 2 basic trailers on there. You can throw a ribbit frog. It works great. A horny toad works great also. This thing has little edges on it, little spines. And, a lot of times if you throw a horny toad or a ribbit on a buzz bait, it runs up on its side like that. That doesn't look realistic. Doesn't look like a frog. This thing right here eliminates that. You feed it on. You push it up over those ribs. And when you get it on there, you get it where you like it, you push down on those ribs, and it kind of bites into the side of that frog. Swim bait, whatever you're choosing to use as your trailer. And it'll run true. Super glue works great. That's something that I always use. If it's something where I know I'm going to throw this a lot the next day and I'm in a tournament and I don't have time to keep threading them on and fixing them, I'll take a little bit of super glue and feed it on there with it. Works pretty good. I use super glue on all my swim baits too if I'm fishing a lot. But the other bait is this little paddle tail. I have way more confidence in that than that ribbit frog. A lot of places I fish, I'm imitating shad. And when I went to South Carolina, that's what I threw. We were fishing the Santee Cooper Lakes, and this was a bait that I had confidence in, and I knew if I put that size trailer on there, that's what they were honed in on, that's what they were feeding. I seen them busting, stuff like that. I said, okay, I need to downsize. I need to slow down. I need to throw a smaller bait. So that was what I put on and fished with. In the summer months, I do fish mostly current, whether it be below a powerhouse, a river, a creek. That's what I gravitate to. The lake, in the summer, the fish pull out deep. So, you're fishing offshore. Your bass boat guys are fishing offshore. Your kayak guys are moving offshore. They're following the fish, chasing them out. I'm following my fish up, all year long. I'm following them shallower and shallower. In the summer months, if you find cooler water temperatures, if you find flowing, moving water, a fish can stay shallow his whole life. A lot of rivers and creeks in Alabama have a stable enough environment. The current fluctuates so much, the water temps so much, there's so much tree cover, canopy cover. It stays cool in there, and there's enough bait fish. That bait fish is moving up, and those fish are just following them. So that's usually what I do. I work to the rivers and the creeks in the summer months. And a big one then is a bull shad. I throw a bull shad swim bait by Mike Buca. It's also a bait that you're not necessarily looking to catch a ton of fish on. This is a 5-inch. I have a bunch of these. This is one that I throw a lot. It's been beat up. I've had it for several years. The bone works great. And not only clear water, people think, well, I want to go more natural. That's right. But I throw mine so fast, and in current water, I want them to see something coming, and I don't want them to have a lot of time to look at it. I power fish 24/7. But this bait really works good if there's a little color. Not muddy. If there's a little bit of color, this bait works great compared to a natural. I throw the floater in the Mike Buca. If it's something I'm wanting to work slow on the surface, just keeping the strike zone, because I know they're feeding up, but they're not wanting, they're not really honed in on something coming right by their face. They're wanting to commit. They're wanting to come all the way to the surface and bust something to trigger them. I'll throw the floater in that. But in the summer months, I typically look at current seams. I try to think about what's going on under the water compared to what the naked eye sees. You come into a river, a creek, the first thing you're going to notice shade, tree cover, grass if there's grass, current, obviously rocks, but there's so much more going on under the water that people don't pay attention to. I advise taking the time and learning what's going on under the water. I've waded creeks and rivers all my life, and spending that time on the water, fishing the same places and learning, okay, well, the current's coming over some rocks. A lot of people don't realize right below that set of shoals right there, that current's washing out a little hole. And bass are a lot like trout. Trout get, right behind a rock. It can be that big. Trout gets right behind it. He's not spending any energy swimming. So he's just maintaining himself. Bass do the same thing. Current's coming over. You go, man, that's too fast for a fish to be there. I've said that 1,000 times. And I've caught fish right there. But it's hard to get something to where he's at. If they're eating little things like this little jig, current's flying by, you're obviously not going to get this little jig in his strike zone, when that's coming. So a lot of times I approach it with a topwater bait, like a Chopo, or a big whopper plopper. In the summer months, I find that I throw a bigger bait. I'm looking for big fish, and they're hungry. They've spawned. They're ready to feed back up. They're chasing bait. They're doing their thing. I throw a bigger bait. I throw a Strike King Sexy Dog. I like the Sexy Dog Junior as well. This is a great bait. It's got really loud. It's a good profile. It's just something that they're constantly chasing. So I'll bring that over those shoals, and that fish will be sitting right there. Another bait is I love a nickel spinner bait. This is a bluegill bait. If you notice what I said about the Berkeley Chopo, that little green line right there that you see on a lot of bluegill, that spinner bait has it too. That's just something, little key details that I think matters. A lot of times later in the summer, you'll start seeing a lot of bluegill up under the shade. You'll see them eating insects and, kind of suspended right under the surface. And a lot of the bass are feeding on those bluegill, so I try to switch my gears and imitate that bluegill. A bluegill pattern is extremely good, works well for me. And then, excuse me, I'm having a little allergies issues. And also bluegill color crankbaits as well. That little tiny 4x Rapala is a very, very great crankbait. They really figured it out when they made that one. A couple years ago, we had a big Hobie tournament here in Gadsden, and I was like a kid on Christmas. I couldn't wait, I've lived in Gadsden all my life, and I was excited. This is the biggest event I'd ever fished in at the time. And I was just, this is my home. I'm used to fishing here. And it's just like anybody has their home lake. They get excited when a tournament comes to town. I got a chance. But I knew I was fishing against some of the best kayak fishermen in the country. So I had my work cut out. A big player in that event, it was in October, was the Berkeley, or the Whopper Plopper. That was one of the big ones I threw. And then the Sexy Dog, I threw it a lot. A white chatterbait here on Neely Henry is what I threw. And then this bait right here is what won me the tournament. I believe I won $5,400 in that tournament in first place. And I won it on a Bandit 100 that I give 80 cents for. So not always the big expensive baits are what does it for you. My papa always told me, don't get so caught up in what you're doing to forget what God's going to give you an image of. I was fishing that morning. I was super stressed. I wanted to do good for my friends and family. You know, I'd worked my butt off to, you know, and spent a lot of time in kayak fishing and trying to make a name for myself. And I was sitting there fishing that morning, and it wasn't going right. You know, I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. I was losing fish. I was, you know, not executing very well. I was getting down on myself, and I took a break. I was like, man, I just need to, like, you know, get myself back. And I took a minute, ate me a couple of crackers, a couple of Vienna sausages, kind of sitting there relaxing. And I seen a little bitty shad come up on his side, and half his scales was missing, and he was about that size. I paddled over to him, took my kayak paddle, picked him up, brought him over in a boat, and he was almost exactly that bait. And I said, man, I got one. Reached in my box, pulled out a rod, tied it on. A couple casts later, I caught two fish on this one bait. And I have yet to throw this bait since that day because it won me that tournament. But you can see that treble hook is absolutely mangled and bent. I just kept it. I didn't want to change it. It just kind of meant something to me. And here's a brand new one. You can see the color difference. But that bait right there, I caught a 20-inch spotted bass, and I think it was a 16 and a half on that one little bait, and I was having to come apart. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe I got him in the net. That was a highlight of my day, and then it actually sealed the deal for me. I actually won that event all off that little bitty bait. So that bait has definitely, since then, I have definitely used it a ton. It's something that I have a lot of confidence in. You know, even if you're just beating the banks, even if you're just, you know, you ain't got to be in a kayak, you ain't even got to be in a boat. If you're just a bank fisherman, you know, this is a bait that I've walked down here with me and my son. We walked down here to the boat ramp and fished these rocks down through here along these boat docks, and this is a little bait that runs these rocks every day. It's just stuff like that I've thrown. And I'm a big believer sometimes in feathers. This is an old school Hennon Czar spook. This is a one with a feather on the back. A lot of times the fish will key in on that feather. Some people don't think it makes a difference. I'm a believer in it. I throw it a pretty good bit. But there's just two different profiles. Kind of gives you a little bit difference. I think it kind of gives them something to really kind of focus in on, you know. Instead of looking at a whole bait, they kind of see that little bit of extra bit on the back, and they just kind of key in on it. That's pretty much everything that I throw throughout the summer, spring, summer, fall. Shallow water is just all I've ever known. I throw a lot of glide baits also. But that's something that I had to dedicate a lot of time to. These big baits are something that, you know, I've spent time learning and figuring out when and how to throw them. Because I'm a guy, like, I'm a hero or zero. When I go into a tournament, I go in to win the whole thing, or I'd rather zero. I'm going for it all. And a lot of people are scared to throw baits like this with big trebles. Not very weedless. I throw this bait in some of the ugliest and nastiest places. I get hung a lot. I lose baits. But the worst thing about it, I lose a lot of fish on this bait because I throw it in some of the nastiest places that they ain't never seen it before. Don't be afraid to throw them in trees, laydowns. I believe a lot of my equipment in a kayak, a lot of times I can get in there and get him out. You know, as I pull myself in there, I can get him out. But I believe that a lot of people overlook stuff when they're fishing skinny water. They just fish the obvious, you know, a little current seam, an eddy, a little calm spot, stuff like that. That's the first thing people are going to. You know, I'll see a tree or something that's got a lot of depth into it. The tree might go 10 feet back. Well, I start looking, well, what can I get in there? Obviously, a wacky rig's a big one. But, you know, I throw that on spinning rod, spinning line, you know, small line. A skipping buzzbait, I can get in there. I'm able to skip it up in that tree, and it's got a, you know, good solid hook to get him out. I throw typically straight braid when I fish those situations. And the choppos and the whopper ploppers, are, you know, they're on the rise. Everybody's throwing them for good reason. But I throw those in in a lot of places that people don't think a fish is at, or no, I can't get him out of there. Well, I'd rather have to figure it out. You know, I'd rather get the bite and figure out how I'm going to get him out, you know. That's heroed or zeroed me in a lot of tournaments. I've lost fish. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was the one I needed, but I still got the bite. You know, I proved myself something. But that's pretty much how I attack skinny water. Skinny water changes every year. People don't think it does. People go, oh man, I fished that river, that creek 10 years ago. Well, it changes a lot, and it can change fast and in a hurry. I fish a lot of skinny water by myself across the country, and it's something that can be dangerous. Skinny water can be intimidating. It can be dangerous. Things can happen fast and in a hurry, so make sure you let people know where you're at. I let my wife, my friends, I let them know, hey, I'm going to put in here. I plan on taking out here. Or I'm going to bounce around. You know, I'll drop a couple pins. Let people know where you're at. Because you get out there, it's going to be hard for people to get to you. You know, it's not for the weak. You know, you're going to earn it. You know, Drew Gregory is a big name in kayak fishing. A lot of people already know him. If you don't know him, he's cool to watch. It's hard to outwork Drew. Drew puts his kayak in places that kayaks ain't never been. Creeks, streams that you wouldn't even think that you would drive over and go, oh, there's not a fish in there. Well, Drew's going to put in and find out. You know, he fishes those places, kind of like what I do. And when you go to creeks and rivers, a lot of people think, well, I'll float it and fish as I go. You know, the current's going with you. The current's taking you. If you're a tournament fisherman or you're the everyday weekend guy, I would just suggest approach it from a different angle. I fish a lot of creeks and rivers coming from downstream. Current's coming, say north to south. That current's coming, that fish is going to position head in the current. So if you're coming with him, odds are in clear water he's going to see you, or you're throwing down current, you're bringing it up, it doesn't look natural to him. You can bring it across, depending on how you position, and you can get him to bite. I have the best success giving it to them how they want it. I'll approach from downstream. I'll throw up to them. If there's a current seam and there's an eddy, I'll fish the eddy first, and then I'll move into that eddy. I'll throw upstream I'll kind of just fan cast it, work at multiple different angles, change my presentation a time or two, kind of give them a different look, see where they're at and what they're wanting. But I have found that approaching stuff from downstream, upstream, I've got way more bites. They don't hear me coming, they don't see me coming, and the bait's the most realistic as it can get. That's something that took me several years to figure out. We would just go fun fishing as a kid, didn't think it mattered. And then a guy once told me that, you ever seen a minnow, when he gets scared, run upstream? Hardly ever. He turns and goes downstream because that's how he's got momentum. It's like a bird flying into the wind. He's not really going real far, real fast. But if he goes downwind, he's booking it. Same thing with minnows and bait fish. They're trying to get out of there so they don't get ambushed and ate. Does anybody have any questions about skinny water or anything they want to talk about? Tactics, presentations, line, rods, reels? I'm open for anything.
First thing I think of is, how do you deal with the alligators?
Sir? Alligators? I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of them. Eufaula, we had a Hobie event on Eufaula. I fished Caddo Lake in Texas and Louisiana. The Red River in Louisiana, I fished around them a bunch. It can be intimidating at first. For the most part, they won't bother you, but it depends on what stage and time of year they're in. If it's breeding season, they can be a little more edgy. They're very curious animals. And they really love loud top waters. So keep that in mind. I've actually hooked a couple alligators on top waters. Frogs, they love eating frogs. Them little bitty alligators about that big will eat a frog all the time. I'm not saying they won't chase you because I've had several friends that have got chased by them. I myself have had them kind of following me, and I I've got a motor on my kayak now. I got a Newport Vessels NK180, so I can kind of get up out of there if one's following me. So I can kind of distance myself from them. And, you know, alligators eat the same thing we're fishing for. They're eating bass too. So a lot of times, you know, you hook one, and alligator will pop his head up. He's coming and looking for it, so you got to hurry up and get that fish out of there. I've lost a couple fish to alligators on Eufaula before. So, but another thing is motors. Growing up as a kid, kayak fishing to me was just something we did for fun. You know, it was something we loaded up after school, threw in the back of our pickup trucks. And you know, growing up as a kid, it wasn't kayaks; it was canoes. My papa would load up a canoe. After church, we would hit the creek or the river, and that was our escape. You know, that was what we did for fun. And kayak fishing has evolved big time over the years. It's expanded. It's gotten huge. There's people doing it full time for an income. You got guys traveling across the country that's earning their living off of it. I myself work a full-time job, and so kayak fishing is still a hobby and something I do for fun and tournaments. But it took me a long time to get on the motor kick or pedals. It was kind of in my head. It was something that I had engraved. That I have a thing. It's called "Keep it simple, stupid" motto. I like the bare minimum on my kayak. I don't want it cluttered. I don't want a bunch of baits laying around everywhere, a bunch of tackle. So I take 2, 3, 4 rods, handful of baits when I was growing up, hit the water, and had just as much success then as I do now. But the ways have changed. The way I look at things, the amount of baits I can bring, you know, the amount of tackle I can store on my kayak has changed. A motor, kayaks are bigger, better, stronger, faster, everything, you name it. Pedal drives have come a long ways. I'm on the Jackson kayak fishing team. And so if you're interested in looking at Jackson kayaks or Hobie kayaks, check out Bucks. You can demo them at Bucks Island and Southside. I love the Jackson kayak pedal system. It's fast, it's efficient, and I love the kick up method. If you hit something, I fish shallow stuff, so I'm abusive. I hit stuff, not meaning to, and it kicks up in there, doesn't damage a lot of stuff, so it's great. But I like to keep my kayak simple still to this day. I have a kayak set up for lakes, rivers, pedal drive, you know, electronics, a motor, that if I'm taking it and I'm fishing for $10,000, that's what I'm taking with me. If creeks and rivers ain't an option, that's the boat I'm taking. If I'm fishing a lake or I'm John Coxing it, you know, as I say, if I'm just going to beat the bank, you know, if I'm going to fish grass edges or whatever, that's the boat I'm taking. If I'm fishing creeks or rivers, I take my more smaller setup, my throw and go kind of kayak. And a lot of times I'll take these Plano Edge boxes. I'll take 2 of these, slide them under my seat, take 4 rods. That's all I've got. I usually kind of pick my tackle to be very versatile. A lot of the bass boat guys, not knocking them, they have the room to do it. They can have 20 rods. I've got to be very strategic with my, if I said that wrong, with my setups. I've got to have very versatile setups. So I'll have 2 or 3 rods. It'll be a 7'2" medium heavy bait casting rod. I throw a lot of braid to fluoro leaders. I like straight braid on a lot of baits. I don't like a lot of stretch. One, in a kayak, I feel like I don't need the stretch because I'm in a kayak. Everything's against me. When I set the hook, I've got to eliminate as much of that stretch as possible because I'm not getting as good as a hook set as a guy standing on a 21-foot skeeter because that boat's not giving with him. He's really burying it in him. So I need I don't need a stretch. You know, I need that straight braid. When I've went to straight braid, I don't lose as many fish. I like my smaller, simpler kayak. I'll hit multiple different, ramps throughout the day. I'll say, well, I'm by myself. I can't do a 10-mile float, fish a river. So I'll drop in, fish up or down a half a mile or a mile or so. And then if it's not happening there, I'll take out and go to the next one. I'll work my way down. I'll try to bounce around and hit as many places as possible, A, B, C, and D spot. But if you have a big kayak, well, you're wore out. I'm not really necessarily a big guy. I'm not a really big, strong guy. So it wears me out with a big boat, a big kayak that I'm having to take in and out of the water. So that kind of lightweight, a Jackson Coosa HD, the new Coosa X, if y'all have not seen that, is a sweet river boat. That's going to be my new river boat. It's got the horizontal rod storage, which is great. Keep your rods out of the trees. But it's light and small enough that I can maneuver in shoals and stuff and take in and out and hit a bunch of different spots. Ramp jumping, as we call it. But yeah, that's pretty much my way of river fishing. Aggressive. If you're not an aggressive fisherman, you should try it. If that's not something that you're familiar with, something you're interested in learning about or going out and fishing, I've got a Facebook page. You're more than welcome to message me on Facebook, Coley McGowan. I'll be more than willing to give anybody my number if you want to go. I'll be more than happy to go out and show you some things. It's things that people taught me. I didn't learn everything on my own. So I love fishing with new people and learning new techniques and showing people techniques that I've been blessed enough to learn from people across the country. But it's just, go out, find you a creek or a river, get away from the crowd. Enjoy your time on the water, whether it just be an afternoon or you're doing it for a tournament. Go out and find you a little creek or a river or something that's got some moving water and throw you a fast-moving bait. A lot of smaller profile stuff, like little spooks, people are going to kick me for it. A lot of people throw these on, bait casters. I throw my smaller stuff on spinning rods. I get more action out of it, and I'm real precise and accurate. I'm not throwing a mile, if I'm fishing a creek or a river, I need to be pinpoint where I'm wanting to put it. In a spinning rod, I'm way more accurate. That's just me. A lot of people disagree with that. Bigger profile stuff, I'll throw like a 7.3 heavy, 7.4 heavy. On the bigger choppos and whopper ploppers, and I'll throw 50. I like 50-pound braid for me. A lot of my friends and people I fish with throw 65. I like the 50. And a lot of things people don't really pay a lot of attention to on the choppos and topwaters. A lot of your fish are going to come off on topwater. It's just natural. It's going to happen. You're going to throw it. If you look at that Berkeley Chopo, it's just got that's a fixed line tie. Well, you look at this whopper plopper. It's got a split ring on there, and that comes factory, a big split ring. On mostly all my chopos or whopper ploppers or spooks, I put a split ring. It gives it more action, and when that fish jumps, because he's gonna jump, when you hook him in skinny water, it allows that bait, it gives it a little give to roll and move. It doesn't have it a pinch, where it breaks loose and comes unbuttoned. So split rings are big. The little thing people don't really think a lot about when throwing them. Just get out there and fish some skinny water. Wade around. You ain't got to have a kayak. Find you a bridge or a boat ramp you can put in at, wade. Fish little shade pockets throughout the day. Stuff like that. Just little things like that people don't think about creeks and rivers holding big fish. Big fish live there year-round, all year long. If you find rivers and creeks that have a big enough system to where the fish can thrive all year long, they're not just coming there. They live there winter, summer, fall. Those fish are going to live there their whole life. You're going to have fish come and go, of course, but you're going to have resident fish that live there all their life. And current fish are stronger. They're faster. They're meaner. They're more aggressive because they're competing for food. Everything's coming to them, all the time. And so they're having to be aggressive and go after what they want. So just get out there and fish some rivers and creeks. Anybody got any questions? Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Another one down. Hope you learned something about fishing some skinny water. Good run through of a lot of the different tackle that Coley is using and employing in those skinny water areas. I hope you picked up on exactly what he meant by skinny water. So All right. We're going to shut it off here for a few minutes, and we're going to wait on Mr. Lee Pitts, the crappie king of Weiss Lake. I have no idea what he's going to talk about. He's got a ton of knowledge to share. So we'll be back here in just about 15 minutes. 2 o'clock, I think, is when Lee is up. So we'll see you back.